So a lot of what you're talking about is transforming the situation where you are, but it begins with transforming your attitude about it, is what I keep hearing you talk about, and seeing it through the eyes of what is there, not what is missing, right?
Right.
So I noticed there's a chapter in your book, I think it's called Just 7 Minutes.
Yes.
So what's like your daily practice that keeps you able, because it's easier said than done, right? I can just say I'm going to have this positive outlook. So what do you do to help you stay in that on a daily basis? I personally know that this is a big part of everything that you teach anyone you're mentoring.
Yes. Okay, folks. Let's see if I have that, because I think the beginning of it actually has one of the mentors. Okay. I'm just going to read the beginning of this chapter. It's called Just 7 Minutes. There's a little cartoon. The reflection is already smiling back, but there I am not quite getting it yet. But it will come. So the beginning of it reads, just 7 minutes in the morning can transform your life. It's true. You'll discover that the good you seek is seeking you. A rabbi once saw a man running down the street. He asked the man, "Why are you hurrying so?" "I'm rushing to find my livelihood," the man answered. "And how do you know," the rabbi asked, "that your livelihood is running ahead of you? Maybe it's behind you, and all you need to do is stop running and it'll catch up to you." So, okay, I'll just read the story. You don't mind?
Oh, I would love to hear it.
Okay. After I had just finished telling my new friend Mike, this is while I was still in the military, how my life felt unbearable, he responded by saying, "Well, sounds like you need to include that in your morning routine." Morning routine? What's a morning routine, I asked. Mike continued by telling me that the most important thing I could do each day was to practice what he referred to as a morning routine. He suggested that I start immediately. Each morning, upon awakening, before putting on my uniform, even before showering, I was to enjoy a few minutes in positive contemplation as I drank my morning coffee. This included reading a few pages from inspirational books, saying a few familiar prayers, turning any concerns I had over to God, and meditating on all that was good in my life. Before I could react about not having enough time for all that, Mike added, "And it only takes 7 minutes. I timed it just for you." It seemed absurd, but I heard him out. Life isn't about jumping out of bed and racing into your miserable day, he went on. When was the last time you woke up just 7 minutes earlier to be kind and loving to yourself? I was caught off guard. Was he really asking me if I was ever kind and loving to myself? This was a man's man. We were standing on an army base, for goodness sake. All my defenses were up, but I had no defense against his kindness. "Never," I said. "I promise that if you do this consistently for 30 days, you will be amazed at how much your life will have transformed for the better. But if you can't wake up just 7 minutes earlier to be kind and loving to Darrell, there is nothing anyone can do to help you." I wanted to believe that what he said was true, primarily because the thought of continuing to struggle through life like I had been felt too overwhelming. I began the very next morning. I did it exactly like he prescribed. Within 15 days, I had an outrageously optimistic thought. If I continue doing this and following whatever other helpful suggestions are offered to me, my life will continue to get better. This felt so good that I could still remember exactly where I was when it hit me. Something shifted in me in that instant. It became clear to me that life worked from the inside out. All my life, I had struggled to improve my external circumstances. I was convinced that once I got everything arranged perfectly, the right relationship, right career, right home, right car, etc., then I'd be happy. Living this way was unbearable. I could never get it all together, so I believed I was a loser. What a thrill to discover that this was not the case at all. Life is simpler than I had been imagining it to be. All I had to do was switch from striving to believing. This simple 7-minute morning routine was taking me from a hopeless state of mind to a hopeful state of mind. We live in a spiritual universe. It runs according to spiritual law, a law as real as that of gravity. Simply put, as our consciousness improves, so will our circumstances. As within, so without. When you are optimistic, good things happen. When you renew your faith upon awakening, blessings will chase you down throughout the day. The truth is, one does not have faith because things are going well. Rather, things go well because one has faith. Faith has been defined as a state of joyful expectancy. I like that definition. My regular morning routine helps me maintain this healthy state of mind. Life is not meant to be a struggle. To paraphrase Mike, I promise that if you do this consistently for 30 days, you will be amazed at how much your life will have transformed for the better. But if you can't wake up just 7 minutes earlier to be kind and loving to yourself, there is nothing anyone can do to help you.
Fantastic.
Do I drop the mic now?
Well, this is really bridging all of this into the spiritual part of your whole shtick. And it's kind of like coming out of the closet in here, mixed all this kind of intellectual writing and things to bring spirituality and God into the space to be, and I think that's something that we had talked about before this, how it's almost can be embarrassing, right? To speak that love is the most powerful force in the universe. But I know that you learned that from the least expected people who taught you that is the truth. And I think it's what everyone wants to believe and wants to stay true to. And we read quotes from a lot of great leaders, but I think at the end of the day, it's very difficult to let go enough to trust that when our sort of fears about what we might look like or what people are going to think about us come up.
Yes.
So how did you learn this art of trusting and love? Because it's very Taoist as well. The Tao, which is always flowing, you hear stories about surrendering to what's happening, and somehow it ends up it's always taking you in the right direction in the least expected ways. But in order to do that, you also have to be willing to look silly or foolish in the eyes of people who think that they know better. So when I hear you talking about the morning routine, it seems like every spiritual tradition has some form of this meditation, affirmative thinking, right? To get ourselves into harmony. I've been reading your book as part of my morning routine. That's why I was happy to be a part of this today, because I've known you a long time. I had it on my table for a couple of weeks before I finally picked it up and read it, and I go, wow, this guy has a few good things to say. So I've been using it as part of my morning routine. I can personally endorse it there.
Oh my God, I found how I fell into this.
Yeah, so why don't you read that chapter?
Okay, so believe them, I was taught spirituality as a way of life in the most unlikely place by Marines in the United States military. This was 1986.
I have to use the restroom.
Okay, go ahead. Go let it flow, baby.
Yes.
All right. So there's actually a chapter in here where I actually talk about how this all happened, how I was introduced to the radical idea for most people that love is the most powerful force in the universe. And it's a force that we activate within our own thinking, between our ears and our own consciousness. It's not something I'm looking to get from the outside. It's something that I'm looking to bring to each situation. And I actually was introduced to this in 1986 by a Marine gunnery sergeant while I was in the service. And the chapter is called "It's Heroic to Be Yourself." And I got the artwork for this is like a sailor, photo of a sailor. What is courage? And the other guy, the other old salt with his shirt off and his dog tags, is saying, "The discipline to remain hopeful." What is courage? The discipline to remain hopeful. So, what's your story, Fazaro? Asked the Master Gunnery Sergeant of the United States Marine Corps who facilitated the group therapy session. Even in this rehabilitative environment, he intimidated me. A combat veteran, he was every bit the hero I felt deep down I could never be. So I proceeded to share my tale of woe. I had spun this yarn of tragedies I had endured throughout my childhood many times before. I believed that by having been a victim of such circumstances, I'd seem heroic. After talking long enough that I felt confident that I gained the group's approval, I shut up. The master gunnery sergeant just kept looking at me. Then he broke the silence. Do you know what you are, Fazaro? You're a phony. Beep! I was embarrassed. This was my introduction to the group, and I felt ashamed. I wanted to run out of there. I felt trapped. Then, a sense of relief came over me. The jig was up. I could let down my guard. I didn't have to keep pretending. Do you know how a coward goes through life, Fazaro? He asked. No. Like this, he said. Oh, thanks. Yeah. He held his clenched fists in front of him, and he said, I wasted my entire life like this, like he was going to fight, because I was afraid of life. And then he said this. He said, wouldn't it be great to go through life like this? And he went like this. He smiled broadly, opening his arms out wide. Yes, I was sold. It became clear that the reason I had always felt ashamed wasn't because I was a bad person. It was because I had continued to abandon myself by pretending to be who I thought others wanted me to be. Attempting to win the approval of others in this manner wasn't building me up. It was tearing me down by reinforcing the belief that I wasn't good enough as is. I'd become convinced that if I was just myself, I'd never measure up. Thanks to this master gunnery sergeant's continued encouragement, I became willing to risk it all and live heroically by simply being me. I found that trust manifests miracles, and life is a battle only until I let down my guard. The best way I've found to pull this off is by putting my trust in God, trusting that God is always arranging things on my behalf. I can trust that the way in which things work out will always be for my highest good as long as I'm being honest. I often remind myself, if I don't get such and such, it means God has something better in store for me. Hindsight has proven this to always be true. There's also no need to set boundaries. They've already been set. Paying attention to my internal gauges lets me know where they are. To do so, I often remind myself of two truths. One is a Chinese proverb: tension is who you think you should be, relaxation is who you are. The other is simply, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no. Trusting in the care of God and being ourselves is an exhilarating way to live. It's also more effective than people-pleasing or manipulating others to get what we believe we must have. Stepping out boldly on faith in this way always leads to better than expected outcomes. The Taoist religion advises, just be what you are. You do not need to change yourself to be divine. You are created of spirit, and to be powerful and happy, simply let nature take its course. What a relief, folks. A copy of the following poem was given to me in 1986 by the man who introduced me to the healthy habit of starting each day with a morning routine of prayer and meditation. It's called The Guy in the Glass. When you get what you want in your struggle for self, and the world makes you king for a day, then go to the mirror and look at yourself and see what that guy has to say. For it isn't your father or mother or wife whose judgment upon you must pass. The feller whose verdict counts most in your life is the guy staring back from the glass. He's the fella to please, never mind all the rest, for he's with you up to the end. And you've passed your most dangerous, difficult test if the guy in the glass is your friend. You may be like Jack Horner and chisel a plum and think you're a wonderful guy, but the man in the glass says you're only a bum if you can't look him straight in the eye. You can fool the whole world down the pathway of years and get pats on the back as you pass, but your final reward will be heartache and tears if you cheated the man in the glass. That's by Dale Winbrook. So yeah, that's how I was introduced to this stuff, believe it or not, from in the military.
Very nice, very nice. Thank you for reading that. When you were reading that, I was thinking about, I know you had a different title for the book originally.
Yes.
What was the original title?
Just Wear the White Hat.
And I love that concept. It goes with everything else you're saying. You want to just share a moment about what that means to just wear the white hat?
Yes.
I remember the conversation we had.
Yes.
When you decided, you kind of fell in love with that idea.
Okay. All right, folks. That is from another story in here called "The Odds Are in Your Favor."
And let me say this too, because I was a person who, I was teaching at LA Unified right before we met, and I left teaching because I couldn't handle it. I was so stressed out. I didn't have the tools to support myself in the way you're talking about. And I didn't realize that I had super high anxiety, that my family had always had it. Like, because we had never addressed it, it was just like, your uncle acts weird. He goes crazy at night, but, whatever. So at one point in my life, I was like 30 years old, like having a nervous breakdown because I was afraid of the fear itself, right?
Yes.
And so I stepped out boldly, left teaching, I talked to Wayne Dyer on the telephone on his radio show, thought I was gonna step into becoming a writer and this and that, like immediately. Like as soon as I quit, they were gonna be waiting for me outside to pick me up, right? They weren't. What I found was I was face to face with addressing the anxiety. I didn't know, I literally tried to check myself into a hospital not far from here, and they're the ones who told me, you're just having panic attacks, and it was like a relief, like some of the things, it finally was like, okay, I'm not like this kind of what I thought I was, right? But what I was gonna say is then I started embarking on wanting to do my own thing. I wanted to do the things we're doing now, like the podcast, the writing, the teaching. We speak at the Unity down the street every third Sunday, doing these things. But I thought that coaches and things I was working with were going to be the solution, but I soon found out that they were just selling more stuff, right? And I thought, I'll never be able to do it because I can't push and shove. I can't trick people and friends into buying things. I don't like that feeling. That's why I'm the way I am already, right? So that's where I feel like what you're going to talk about now is so helpful to know that I don't have to do all of that, because I think there's a lot of creative people that don't want to do that and know that they're selling themselves short by living that way, but don't exactly have the tools to persevere. And that's why I love you and your book, because when I read it, it reminds me that I don't have to do any of those things that I don't want to do, but I have to have faith of some sort in something greater that's pushing me along, that voice inside me. And right? So anyway, back to the part about the wearing the white hat.
Yeah, the book was almost titled Just Wear the White Hat. And actually this drawing I did of this old-timey cowboy adjusting his hat in the mirror was going to be the cover. But, this is one creative lesson. I hope if anyone here is creative, you got to be willing to kill your darlings. I mean, if you have an idea, doesn't have to be set in stone. If you start getting an intuitive hunch to go in another direction. And for a long time, I wasn't able to do that. But thanks to, learning to live this way, to become more flexible, be willing to kill the darlings so something better can happen.
And I can vouch that that's one of the greatest things of working with you on the podcast is that we have a certain idea about what it's going to be, but half the time, it's more than half the time, everything we talked about goes out the window fairly quickly, and we have a totally different show.
Yeah.
But I love that about you, because what it's taught me is to trust the feeling within and go with that feeling of excitement, laughter, joy, rather than I got to do it this way. I used to play music, and I would say, this song's so good, but no one else liked it, and I would keep doing it and driving it into the ground. Eventually, I had to learn just let it go. Just go with what's working and feels good.
So, let's see. Okay, I'm going to read this one because it's short. So this was Just to Wear the White Hat. This was almost the title of the book, and the title of this chapter is actually The Odds Are in Your Favor. A 54-year-old woman had a heart attack and was taken to the hospital. While on the operating table, she had a near-death experience. Let's see what happens. Seeing God, she asked, "Is my time up?" God said, "No, you have another 43 years, 2 months, and 8 days to live." Upon recovery, the woman decided to stay in the hospital and have a facelift, liposuction, breast implants, and a tummy tuck. She even had someone come in and change her hair color and brighten her teeth. Since she had so much more time to live, she figured might as well make the most of it. After her last operation, she was released from the hospital. While crossing the street on her way home, she was killed by an ambulance. Arriving in front of God, she demanded, "I thought you said I had another 43 years to live. Why didn't you pull me from out of the path of the ambulance?" God replied, "I didn't recognize you." The ultimate lie we tend to tell ourselves is that we're not good enough as is. Actually, the exact opposite is true. We're designed to succeed as is. To thine own self be true is meant to be a reminder of this fact. That's by Shakespeare, folks. Just thought I'd impress you. This guy really reads Shakespeare? No, but I stole a few quotes.
You probably found it on your TV in the morning, didn't you?
Probably. All right. The odds are always for you when you're not pretending to be something you're not. This is the hard lesson to learn.
Yes.
But I'll tell you, it works. It's true. A friend of mine is an actor and called excited about 2 upcoming auditions. I reminded him to avoid the temptation to try to figure out what he thought they wanted in order for him to get the job. All I said was, make sure you eat before the audition and just be yourself. You don't have to go on a crash diet, get a haircut, or pretend to be anything other than who you really are. If you pretend to be anything you're not, they won't recognize you as the right person for the part.
Yes.
Whenever I feel concerned that I might not get something I believe I must have, or might lose something I already have, it's an indication I've lost my faith in God. I've lost my joyous expectancy that all will work out better than expected if I'm just honest as is. Lately, I've taken to the practice of reminding myself and my friends to just wear the white hat. In old Western movies, the good guys always wear a white hat, the bad guys wear a black one. Anytime I feel it necessary that I get my own way by any means other than being honest and trusting the results to God, I'm putting on the black hat. Since this is the case, it proves that wearing the white hat is our natural state. The reminder to just wear the white hat is a powerful affirmation that my success is assured when I'm true to myself. The simple idea of just wearing the white hat always elevates me to my ideal. This ideal is the highest image of myself, and it just so happens to be the real me as is. How do I know this is true? The same way you know it's true. Because it feels great when we behave from this place. We feel secure when we display kindness. We feel enthusiastic and confident when we trust that God is arranging things on the unseen plane for our highest good. It reinforces our faith that all things work together for good as long as we're honest and kind. If we don't get this job, we'll get a better one. If we don't get the outcome that we saw today, a better one will present itself tomorrow. Believe, trust in God's perfect love, and meanwhile, be kind. And the outcome will be successful. In other words, just wear the white hat.
Very nice.
And Brian's wearing his white hat, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right. That's right. Hello, Brian, in the white hat. Nice to see you. So I know a lot of the people who inspire you come from the New Thought movement in the United States and in Europe and in the world, really. Who are some of the authors that you really find inspiration from?
Okay, a lot of the authors. The first author that really inspired me in the beginning was Emmett Fox.
Right.
Opened my mind. And this was given to me in 1986 while I was still in the military by these guys. They said, hey, did you try reading some of these books from Emmett Fox? Funniest thing, folks, just a few months ago, Eddie Murphy was interviewed. I don't know if it was Parade magazine or one of the big magazines, but
right.
You could find it online. And you know how these like snarky interviews try to stump the celebrity? So what book's on your nightstand, Eddie? I mean, I have books on my nightstand. If someone asked me, what book? You know, but Eddie Murphy had no problem. He didn't skip a beat. He goes, the book I'm reading right now is
How to Make Your Life Worthwhile?
yes, it is by Emmett Fox.
Right.
How to Make Your Life Worthwhile by Emmett Fox, which is a great one. I highly recommend it. It's like 1 or 2 pagers that really lift you upstairs. And he said it's a great book. I love it, and I highly recommend it. So that's one author, Emmett Fox.
Right.
Another one is Eric Butterworth is another author that I read a lot. I also
What about Florence?
Florence Scovel Shinn. Oh my God, you could get these books. Florence Scovel Shinn wrote The Game of Life and How to Play It. She was an artist, an illustrator, when very few women were illustrators in America. It was the beginning of last century. Married to an artist, and she wrote The Game of Life and How to Play It. You can get this book for a penny used on Amazon, $3 to have it delivered to your house. It's thin like my book, easy to read, and I highly recommend it. She has a couple others. Who else is there? Let's see. Ed? I forget.
Joseph Murphy.
Oh, Joseph Murphy. The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy is another great one.
Raymond Charles Barker.
Raymond Charles Barker, The Power of Decision. That's another great one. These are, look, if I could read them, you could read them. These aren't intellectual books. They're easy to read, but you'll see how they don't set off any alarms in your mind. I mean, I'm pretty judgmental. Ed can tell you that.
Right.
I mean, I got like New Jersey Tourette's. There's like a guy from New Jersey living there. I look at this one. Look at this. What's this? What is this garbage? You know, and I gotta like shoot away. But the great thing about these authors, none of this stuff set off any alarms. Even the guy in my head went, "Hey, this stuff's pretty good."
Right.
So all these authors we're recommending are digestible and very positive and uplifting and short and easy to read.
Fantastic. And they're all part of your morning routine,
Yes.
your daily reading.
There's also a relatively new author, Alan Cohen, A Deep Breath of Life. That's a morning reader. You could read, a page for each day.
Right.
I highly recommend that one. Emmett Fox, there's Around the Year with Emmett Fox.
Right.
That's morning meditations that an editor put together of his.
Right.
And these books have been around for many, many decades. These aren't super new. Even the Alan Cohen books, probably from the 80s.
Right. Yeah, a lot of these things are. Was it Butterworth, Oprah's favorite book?
Yes.
Butterworth?
Yeah, Butterworth, Eric Butterworth, the author we just recommended. The book that she said if she was stuck on an island all alone with no other books, it would be Eric Butterworth's book. What's the title of that one? He wrote many books, folks.
What was that?
It's not The Power of Belief.
I'll have to come up with
We'll
that.
come up. We'll let you know.
Like, who else is so Unity is part of the movement of what do they call it? Practical Christianity in this country.
Yeah, it was the New
came
Thought.
from New Thought.
New Thought, which is basically around the middle of the last 2 centuries ago, the 1800s, the 19th century, and about the middle of there, people like Thoreau and Whitman and Emerson, these guys were starting to see how practical these writings in religious texts weren't just these things for sophisticated people up here.
Right, not so dogmatic.
No, forget the dogma, and let's just see if this stuff is practical.
Right.
Good, sound, psychological principles that you could apply to everyday living. And that's basically what the whole New Thought movement that was born out of all this. It also takes from the Stoics and Greek philosophy, but it just brings the idea of if we live by certain principles and align the way we think in a more positive frame of mind, and we continue to do this, that you can start becoming aware of how our consciousness really does affect our circumstances.
Right. Yeah, I've seen the interview with Maya Angelou.
Yes.
Talked about that as well.
Yes.
Unity was a major influence on
She
her
was
life.
a student at Unity School of Practical Christianity in Missouri, and her teacher was, I think, Ernest Wilson. Maya Angelou. You could find that interview online.
Right. And can't quite remember where we were going with this, but I do know that a lot of the principles in your book, was what I was going to say, are coming from this long-standing movement of people who wanted practical principles that they can live by to tap into the power that has allowed people throughout history to overcome what seemingly is unovercomable, right?
Yeah.
And we all have those things, whether it's a relationship in our life, whether it's something in our job, whatever it is. It could be the most ridiculous fear about calling someone about paying a bill or a question. Whatever that molehill is that we are making into a mountain, it starts in our mind, and changing our own mind about that and tapping into the power, whether you call it God or whatever you call it, it's within us, and we are an expression of it. And that's what I love about this book. It really, when I read it, it's like Eric Butterworth said, it's not a religion, it's a way of looking at the world. And it doesn't matter what you call it, but once you're looking at it through this lens, you start to see everything and everybody differently, and you become generous in the way you were describing, rather than trying to get. You realize you have a lot to give, and you start sharing it. So before we wrap up, you got one more thing you want to share with us?
Two short things to share.
Right.
And this is because this also, when you make the commitment to be kind and loving to yourself in the morning, and do some, inspirational readings like we mentioned in that other story that's in here, just 7 minutes.
Right.
You start to become much more able to listen to your intuitive guidance, which never will steer you wrong. You start to trust it more and more. Whatever you do, you're creative. I tell some people, I'm just not creative. I said, you don't have to be creative to be creative. Being creative is arranging the furniture in your house.
Right.
That's being creative. Figuring out math is creative. Paying bills and budget. It's all creative. We get frustrated because we're not learning to listen to the intuition within. But here's a great story about that, because following these principles isn't just Pollyanna. It really helps us become hyper aware of our intuitive nature. There's a story called "It's Time to Go Pro, Trust Your Gut." And there's a couple of cameras having a conversation with each other, two cameras. Your intuition is always correct? The other camera responds, is it yours? I'm always moving too fast to notice. This is a conversation I had with someone actually in this bookstore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like a year or so ago. Okay, so here we go. If you doubt your abilities, remember that you have an inner resource you can draw upon to direct you in all situations. I was working on a video production with a novice camera operator. I explained the expected angles and shot list with him. Once shooting began, so did the problems. If the angle was good, the composition was off. When the composition was good, following the action was neglected. After reviewing the oversights with him, he was concerned if he'd ever be able to get it right. I knew better than to expect him to learn the theory of composition or cinematography within the limited time we had to complete this project. So rather than taking the long way around, and this is the thing, folks, all these other methods of teaching are good and practical, but they really are taking the long way around to get us to this truth, regardless of what it is, and it's this. So rather than taking the long way around, they simply said, trust your gut. When you feel a joyful nudge, follow it. Good composition feels good. Stick with what feels good. After shooting resumed, wherever missteps in camera work were brought up, he responded, I knew it. And he'd explain how he felt a hunch to do what would have worked, but didn't follow it. I congratulated him. See, isn't it amazing how trusting your gut, your intuition, your own divine nature will make you a professional camera operator? When he achieved the perfect shot, he was thrilled. I can't believe this really works. It's amazing. Instead of trying to figure out how to do what I thought would work, I just went with what felt good. God is continually guiding you to greater good. Since love is another word for God, you consider that love is continually guiding you to greater good. Place your trust in your own divine nature, the God within, and you'll move forward with joyful expectation and confidence. Follow every good leading of your conscience. Go with what feels right. Conscience is from Latin, con, with, sentia, knowing. Conscience means with knowing. So following every good leading of your conscience or intuition can be considered taking a scientific approach to living. You may be wondering, how can I become more receptive to my own divine nature, the still small voice, the professional guidance from within? You do so by getting into the habit of tuning into it. This is why it's best to seek God early in the day. Just for 1 month, try waking up a half hour earlier than usual to enjoy some time alone on the couch, reading a page or two from a few inspirational books. Doing this dials you into your higher self. You'll notice your mind joining with thoughts of health, joy, success, freedom, prosperity, love, and possibility. Even if you do not feel like anything noticeable is happening, you are still tuning yourself into a higher frequency of thought, making yourself receptive to divine guidance throughout the day. If, during your day, fear tempts you to seek refuge in the negative, reach for the higher. At any time throughout your day, you can reinforce your faith with an affirmative statement like, I'm continually being guided by my good. God's love is always leading the way and opening new doors. We just have to trust ourselves by what feels right and choose to go with it.
Very nice. All right, it's just about time to wrap up. Darrell's book is available. It's called Break Out of Your Box by Fusaro.
Yes.
It looks like this. He'll be around to answer questions or sign your book. Before you go, though, there's something standing behind you here. Let's talk about this real quick.
Oh, this is actually one of the illustrations in the book.
Right. So tell us about this piece. Look at it right here. Come on.
Yes, it's called Breakout. I just wanted to show that I'm not lying.
Oh, okay.
You know, if you buy this book, you also get over 40 illustrations for absolutely
that's
free.
correct.
But there it is. It's from the chapter titled Break Out of Your Box. How do you
The
like
funny
that?
thing is, Molly, who put on your art show in Beverly Hills, was the one who suggested you use this piece, and she did not know it was in the book.
I know.
But she said you need to have it here, so her intuition was firing. So tell us about this piece. How did you get this together? I know this is part of your creative recovery show.
Oh, yes.
So talk about it.
Yeah, right now I currently have an art show at Molly's Garage in Beverly Hills, which is a whole nother miracle. Just so you know, in line with everything we're saying, this is a very short story. Ed and I used to meet for coffee in beautiful downtown Culver City.
Ooh la la.
Around noon every day. But what happened is they put these cones, it's like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride now. So
right.
even though I'm a mile and a half from that direction, he's a mile and a half from this direction where he was working, and that's how we'd meet. So we look at our phones to meet, and it was like a 25-minute drive. It used to be like 6 minutes.
True,
so we're like, all right. But instead of keep cursing, the plungers in the middle of the road or whatever, or down lanes, instead of doing that, we just go, okay, where else can we go? So Ed looks on his phone.
That's right.
And sees that there's a coffee shop in Beverly Hills. Now it's further away, but it only took 10 minutes to get to. So we said, I guess that's where we're going. So we drive up to a coffee shop in Beverly Hills. We're having our coffee. And Ed says, why don't we take a walk? So we decide to walk through the neighborhood that's right there, and suck in all that prosperity. It's nice.
Right.
Go for a walk in these neighborhoods. Don't no, these people. Hey, if you resent people with money, then you're not going to be one of them, folks.
Right.
So I just go up there and go, wow, this house is nice. Woo, I wish my house looked like that. And we're loving it up, and all of a sudden we're in front of this house. Now, over 30 years ago, there was an art dealer who I knew lived in Beverly Hills, and she gave me my first art exhibit in New York City. And her name's Molly Barnes. So I had her address for years, and it was in my phone. So we're walking, and I go, wait a minute, I think Molly Barnes lives here. And I look, and we were standing, when I looked, we were right in front of her house. So
Amazing.
Ed goes, are you going to call her? And I go, nah, she's probably napping. you know, because she's older. I mean, if I'm 60 now, this was 30 years ago, yeah.
Right.
So I thought, well, she's probably napping. And Ed goes, call her, she's not napping. And I don't argue with this stuff anymore. I say, all right, well, you know, just go with it. Go with these absurd. I found out the road to success is really led by the most unreasonable way to go. Meaning reason would say, no, don't disturb the old woman. You know, so I just call. I call, she picks up. I go, hey, it's Darrell. Hey, Molly, it's Darrell. She goes, are you coming in? I was like, how'd she know? So I go, okay. You know, so we go inside. We have this wonderful talk. She's showing us around. She's telling Ed. Her house is like a museum of 20th century
original works by every artist you could think of in the 20th century, just lining all the walls.
Every single square inch.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. You name your favorite artist from the 20th century, you'll find a piece of theirs in Molly's house.
And a very personal story about working with
every single one, knowing every single. So at the end of this tour, she turns to me and goes, so what are you doing now? And I've been doing these crazy paintings during the pandemic. This is nothing like what she knew me from years ago. So I'm finding old paintings, and I'm actually doing stuff on top of the old paintings. And
yeah, you find them at thrift stores and on the side of the road. Steven picks them up on his way home from work sometimes. You never know where you're going to find one of these.
Yeah, this beautiful color by number was actually on the side of the road. Someone tossed it, right? So I'll scoop them up and turn them into something new. So she says, so what are you doing now? And I have a whole series of these. And I go, okay. Now, I was a little worried about showing Molly this because although she's a sweet old lady, she has no problem saying, that's crap.
Yes.
So, which is good. I like friends like that. So I show her the phone. I show her, and she goes, you did these? Which is a good sign, you know?
Right.
It means she doesn't really think I'm capable of doing this. So that means it's a compliment. So I said, yeah. She goes, ooh. And she's like, wow. Do you want to have a show? I'd like to have a show. You want to have a show in my garage? And having a show at Molly's garage is actually an honor, believe it or not. So I said, absolutely. So the show is up. It's going to be up for, I think, one more week. She's extending it. And this is one of the pieces. It's also in the book. It's called Breakaway. So the story behind this painting is, like most of my paintings, the metaphor is along everything I write about, the way I live. And this one here is, you know, a paint by numbers painting. The whole point behind it, I don't know if anyone had one of these as a young person, but the paint by numbers is a great way to produce on your own a perfect copy, a perfect painting, but it lacks the risk. You know, you put the paint, it comes with all the colors, they're all numbered, and each little part in here, the numbers correspond to the color you use, you know? So although you end up with a perfect painting, it's kind of void of the feeling of, you know, this, I really stepped out and created this thing.
Right, that's how you get.
It lacks the risk of, like every time I do something, is this gonna ruin this? Is this next brushstroke gonna ruin this thing? You know? Go for it. And I go for it, and I'm like, oh my God, it's perfect. Oh, I'm never gonna be able to pull that off again. That's the thrill of creating, man. That is the thrill. So on this one here, we had the perfectly painted dog, the lassie or whatever it is, this collie at the edge of a field. And to drive home this, I just said, you know what? It's good. You know, and drew this fun-loving Volkswagen. I had a 1968 Bug, just going through the painting with a paint stick. Actually, I use, if you want to know what I use on top of a lot of my paintings, it's called, what's it called? Solid marker. It's what graffiti artists use. This stuff is bulletproof, man. So I do the car on top, and the metaphor of this is, you know, you're better off trusting your gut, taking that risk, the possibility of ruining what you've taken so far and go with that joyful nudge, regardless of how absurd, and that's why we have the googly eyes on the dog, how absurd it may seem to the left side, the reasoning part of your brain, you know? And then, of course, I reframed it in an elaborate frame so it looks hoity-toity, but the message here is go for it. When you feel that joyful nudge, go for it, because it'll take you places where reason will never get you. You know, it's worth the risk.
Right. Yeah, that's the divine spark, right?
Yes.
Like you told that story in the beginning. That when you first went to art school, you felt like a fraud because you didn't know if you could trust it.
Right.
And it sounds like a lot of what you write about is learning to trust that creative spark and knowing that you are worthy of it.
Yes.
And that it is reliable. So I love this piece. You can follow him, Foozaro, Foozaro on Instagram.
Yes.
You can see all of his pieces and find out where Molly's Garage is and contact him about a showing.
Yes.
His book is called
Break Out of Your Box.
Break Out of Your Box. His podcast is called Funniest Thing with Darrell and Ed.
And Ed's a co-host.
I'm the co-host. So, we speak every third Sunday at the Unity of the West Side, where we sneak into a church and somehow we become ministers over the last 20 years.
I've been accused of worse.
Yeah, we didn't consider ourselves ministers, but it was nuns and ministers who told us we were ministers. So eventually, and people who wanted us to marry them. So
yeah, I was actually. There's a great little place to meditate. There's actually this Catholic bookstore,
Pauline Books and Media.
Pauline Books and Media, and Ed found a place. I don't know how. He goes, there's a great little place to meditate. It's air conditioned. It's cool. You walk in there 9 to 5. You know, no one buys. These are the most joyful nuns. These are the nuns that actually, they're called the Daughters of St. Paul.
Yeah.
Now, these nuns are like the creative faction of the Vatican.
Yes.
So these nuns are the artists, the writers, because they're about getting the message out. They're movie makers. They're on the red carpet interviewing celebrities.
Yes.
So it's like these real hip nuns.
Right.
So one day, I was in there meditating, and I guess without my hat and silver hair, someone accused me of being a priest. They thought I was like a priest after work.
Right,
you know,
right.
I was in street clothes.
Right.
So I come out of there, and this one nun, Sister Tekla,
Oh
who
my
looks
gosh,
like
she's a pistol.
She looks like Larry David in a habit.
Right.
So she goes, yeah. They all think you're a priest in there. And I said, well, should I tell them I'm not a priest? No, go with it. It's great.
Yeah, man.
Oh, yeah, I said to her, did you tell him I wasn't a priest? No, I don't think you're a priest. Go with it. It's great.
All right. So you'll always hear his laugh coming if Fazzaro's in the room. We love you. We appreciate you. Thanks for taking the time to share your book.
Yes.
Thank you all for hanging out.
Yes.
Thank you, Darrell.
Yay!
All right. That's all. So he's here if you have any questions. And he loves to chat it up, as you may have guessed. So take care.
Where are the books for sale? Where
The
are
books are
At the
here
register.
at the register.
They're fully stocked, ladies and gentlemen.
Both
And
of
I'll
his
sign
books
them.
are there. He'll sign
yeah.
them for you.
Oh, wait, where's the other? Do you have a copy of
Yeah, What If Godzilla Wanted a Hug?
Let me get a copy of that one.
Yeah,
too.
thank you, Village Well, Books and Coffee, for having Darrell and myself today. So thank you all, and I hope you all enjoy your weekend.
This is the first book, What If Godzilla Just Wanted a Hug? Leading with the Heart Instead of the Chin. So that one's available here at the register also.